It is a fantastic rematch coming up this weekend in Saudi Arabia as Oleksandr Usyk defends his heavyweight championship against Tyson Fury in an epic rematch from the bout that these two had, unifying the heavyweight championship belts back in May. Once again, this is not for the undisputed heavyweight championship because the IBF sucks and took the belt away from Usyk. But still, a bunch of them are on the line when these two step into the ring. As mentioned yesterday, we talked about Usyk. Today, we are looking at what is on the line for the former heavyweight champion of the world and the current challenger, Tyson Fury, in this rematch with Oleksandr Usyk. Fury, legacy-wise first, he has obviously established himself as the heavyweight of this generation, right? He beats Klitschko, he beats Wilder twice. That's like he kind of wins this era. And we talked a bit about it yesterday. Usyk just feels like a late addition to this, so it feels almost like a different era, right? Because Wilder is done. Joshua, he did get to fight him, and he did beat him twice. So I guess like he is still fighting these two guys in this generation, but it still does feel like this is just not necessarily the same era. He wasn't in it the whole way as Fury was. He was just off being awesome at cruiserweight. But to really cap off this run here for Tyson Fury, it sure would be a big feather in the cap to knock off the present day pound for pound great that is Oleksandr Usyk. I don't think a loss changes too much of the feel of his career, right? Like we already had the go last time when he loses to Usyk. And so I think that the loss in the last fight probably does more damage to the reputation than a loss in this one would. It would just be a heavyweight at the end of his career, ended up losing to a very talented fighter who happens to be older, but still, this is just how these things go sometimes. And so I don't think the overall perception of the career of Tyson Fury would be all that different if he were to lose this fight. A win, though, and I do think it does help out a little bit more of the all-time status. I don't think he's ever going to get into that real pantheon of the all-time great heavyweight boxers, right? But I do think that he is able to kind of get back on track at getting close there if you can just pass off the Usyk loss as, yeah, you know what? Really good fighter. Maybe I took him lightly. I've come back now and I've beat him in this fight. So now I am the champ one more time. And I have avenged that loss and not taken it off the record necessarily, but being able to avenge that and just have that win, I think does kind of help round out the resume for him when you are looking at kind of all-time great status in the heavyweight division. So again, I don't think a loss really damages him. A win, and it does kind of get him back into the conversation to not necessarily be at the adults table, but to be kind of waiting in line for that, I suppose. In terms of the here and now, it is a bit more of a desperate situation for Fury. I think he desperately needs a win. A loss here, and he is out of the real heavyweight championship picture. He would have to have Usyk lose to get back into it. And at 36, I don't think he has the time to be waiting around here. And so at this point for me, if he were to lose this bout, I think you just do a fight with Anthony Joshua, just again to kind of round out the era. Even though it is entirely like a decade too late, it is still a fight I think that you kind of roll with and to just kind of, get another big payday and roll on with that and just kind of put a bow on this era of heavyweight boxing. A win gets him most of his gold back, and it likely sets up a trilogy fight that, again, is a monster payday and one of the biggest fights that you could make in a really, really long time. And I think, again, there, if you can win a rivalry against a guy who beat you and was a pound-for-pound great at the time, that, again, starts to bolster that all-time legacy that you start to look at with Tyson Fury in this newer era of heavyweight boxing. So, in the here and now, there is so much on the line for Tyson Fury. A win, and you are back to being the heavyweight champion. You are back to being in those pound-for-pound rankings and all of that. A loss, and it kind of feels like it's done. Not in terms of being a moneymaker, because I think he can do that for as long as he wants to, but in terms of being relevant in the heavyweight title picture, I just feel like it would be a step too far for him to lose this fight and to stay in that title hunt. So, How does he do it? If Usyk is going to start slow again, Fury has to take advantage of this. The one thing he didn't do in the last fight that I think is going to be a real significant step in this one is work the body. I think that in the last fight, he didn't really take advantage of when things were going his way. If you can work the body and kind of wear down Usyk a little bit more, then you start to counterbalance that cardio edge that Usyk is going to probably have in the latter stages of this fight. It is one thing to just not be carrying around that much weight and be able to kind of hang with Tyson Fury and then be able to take advantage. But if you have these big shots that are just knocking the wind out of you, that can start to bring the video game stamina meter down just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And that is where Fury, I think, can be able to hang in the later rounds a little bit more. And they talked after the last fight, they talked about how, no, look, we were happy with the game plan. I thought we worked the body perfectly. We threw a lot of body shots. And that's just, it's not true. And so it's weird that they went out and said that they used the proper game plan when they actually didn't implement it at all. So that tells me that they are aware that that game plan needs to be used a little bit more. The one thing we talked about yesterday on the Usyk side is that Usyk is going to be a little bit more familiar now with that reach advantage that Tyson Fury has and be able to figure out how to get inside maybe a little bit quicker this time. So there needs to be an adjustment on Tyson Fury's end, and I do think making Usyk pay when he comes inside by ripping to the body is going to be a very good way to start this one. There was a lot going on in Fury's life at the time of the last fight, and I'm not making excuses. I've said before, I think Usyk is the guy in this division. I think he's the most talented heavyweight that we have right now when it comes to boxing skill, with Fury being a very close second. So if Fury was taking Usyk lightly in the first fight, he needs to show that he learned his lesson and be able to put it on Usyk in this bout. And any discussion going into anything about Tyson Fury is always going to have a complicated layer to it. Like this fight, I've said, and we're doing a bunch of preview stuff on it, I am so excited for this fight coming up this weekend. I think from a pure analyzing the boxing fight, this is one of the more exciting fights you can make right now in the sport. And I am so excited to watch these guys step into the ring on Saturday afternoon. And when you just look at the boxing element of it with Tyson Fury, it is one of the stories that make people fall in love with this sport, where you have a guy who upsets this dominant champion, ushers in a new era, and at the exact same time starts battling crippling depression, balloons up to 400 pounds, and basically feels like he's going to die any day. He is able to get that back on track, come back into a reinvigorated heavyweight division, continue to dominate, and pick up big win after big win against marquee fighter after marquee fighter, while also dealing with a lot of personal tragedy as that goes along. It is truly an inspiring story. On the other hand, he has said some absolutely deplorable things about the LGBTQIA2S plus communities, and just feels like has a lot of problematic views on a lot of things that alienate a lot of people. And so that is always something that kind of hangs over it. And then you add that to the already difficult situation to stomach with Saudi Arabia having such a major role in this fight as they do in so many of them, and the awful human rights violations that are going on in that part of the world as well. And it just makes for a real difficult weekend for boxing fans to stomach. And it makes it difficult to just enjoy the fights this weekend. Just felt like that needed to be said. I felt like I was almost glossing over it a bit too much given everything going on. So felt we need to put that out there. All that being said, again, from a boxing standpoint, still going to be analyzing this fight, still going to be breaking it down. Full fight preview coming up this weekend. And again, for those watching live a little bit later on in the stream, for those watching delayed, whether it be on YouTube, Daily Motion, or listening in podcast form, we are going to be putting the look at the boxing schedule coming up tomorrow. So again, for those watching live, that's going to be happening a little bit later on here in the stream.